At -40, a wet glove freezes to metal in about 4 seconds. Roughly 1,100 people live at -40 for 8 months of the year, on a plateau in Afghanistan with no road in and no road out. Every one of them stays alive because of a single animal they almost never eat. I'll come back to that. The place is called the Little Pamir. If you want to see how people survive places this unforgiving, subscribe to Nathan Frost. Far eastern end of the Wakhan corridor, 4,200 meters up. Tajikistan to the north, Pakistan to the south, China at the far end. 3 borders, all of them closed. The people are Kyrgyz. In October, the passes load with snow and stay loaded until late May. Whatever is on that plateau in October is all there is until spring. Get the arithmetic wrong in September and somebody dies in February. Usually a child. They are not up there because they chose the highest, coldest ground in Afghanistan. They are up there because 2 empires drew a line in 1895. The British wanted India buffered from Russia. The Russians wanted the same in reverse. Neither wanted a shared border, so they invented a strip of land to sit between them. 350 kilometers long, in places only 15 wide, running east until it touches China. Nobody asked the herders. Their grazing grounds had run in every direction for centuries. Then the surveying was finished, and the routes north and south became somebody else's country. For a long while, that didn't matter much. Borders on paper are not borders on the ground. But through the last century, the paper caught up. Posts went in, guards went in. By the time the Kyrgyz of the Little Pamir understood what had happened, the only direction still open to them was down a single valley toward the rest of Afghanistan, 6 days away, over passes that shut half the year. They didn't move somewhere remote. Remote was drawn around them. Everything a family will eat, burn, or wear between October and May has to be on the plateau before the passes close. Flour, tea, salt, cloth, kerosene, batteries, none of it grows or exists up there. It comes up the valley on yaks from the Wakhi villages below. Sarhed-e-Brogil is the last place with anything like a road, and it's 4 to 6 days out. A yak carries about 80 kilos. That's the unit of everything. Not money, not weight. Yak loads. A family works out how many they need, works out how many animals they can spare from the herd for the trip. And the difference between those 2 numbers is the whole winter. The autumn caravan is the most dangerous thing anybody does all year. Not the destination, the moving. I put an aircraft down on a frozen lake once, at 26, in a whiteout I had no business flying into. It wasn't a crash. I set it down because I could no longer tell which way was up. And the lake was flat and white, and the sky was flat and white, and there was no line between them. I spent 2 nights out there at 38 below, waiting. I had a survival kit, a fuselage to sit in, and a radio. The caravans have yaks and felt. They go anyway, because the alternative is arriving in October with the arithmetic short. At 4,200 meters, nothing woody grows. No trees, no brush worth cutting, nothing you could call firewood within 4 days' walk. So the fuel is manufactured. All summer, every summer. The herds graze the high pasture, and behind them, the dung is collected, pressed into cakes, and stacked in walls to dry in the thin sun. By September, a family's winter fuel is a low wall beside the yurt, and that wall is watched the way you'd watch a fuel gauge on a long leg with no alternate. It burns cool and fast. It doesn't hold like split birch. A stove up there gets fed more or less continuously through the dark, which means somebody wakes to feed it, which means somebody is awake at 3 in the morning every night for 8 months. The wall is the clock. When it's a third gone and it's only January, the family knows exactly what that means and starts thinking about which animals they can afford to lose. There's a second thing working on them up there, and it never stops. At that altitude, the air holds a little over half the oxygen it holds at the coast. Water boils at about 86 degrees, which sounds like trivia until you understand you can never properly cook a bean, and dried meat takes twice the fuel to soften. Everything is harder. Carrying a load is harder, recovering from a chest infection is harder, being pregnant is very much harder. bodies do adapt. More red cells, bigger lungs, a heart that works differently by adulthood. Children born up there grow into it. But adaptation isn't immunity. It's a tax you pay, quietly for a lifetime. The cold is what the photographs show. The altitude is what actually shortens the lives. The yurt is not a tent. It's a machine. And it's an old one. Wooden lattice for the walls, bent poles up to a ring at the crown, and over all of it, heavy felt pressed from the wool of their own sheep. In winter, they double it. Snowbanks up against the outside, and snow is an insulator. A drifted yurt is a warmer yurt. -40 outside, somewhere around +15 at head height inside, over the stove. That gap, held with dung and felt and nothing else, is the achievement. The floor is where it gets cold. Heat sits high, so people live low and sleep lower, on layered felt with the animals close. Frost forms on the inside of the crown ring and drops as the fire dies. There's no chimney in the way you're picturing. Smoke goes up and out the crown, and some of it doesn't. Everybody breathes it. In a house sealed for 8 months, that has a cost too, and it lands hardest on whoever is smallest and closest to the floor. There is no money on the Little Pamir in any way that matters. There's nothing to spend it on, and nobody to spend it with for 6 days in any direction. So the trade is animals for goods, and the terms are set by whoever climbed up the valley to meet them. A Wakhi trader comes up in summer with flour, tea, cloth, salt. He knows what the Kyrgyz need. He also knows they cannot take their yaks anywhere else, because there is nowhere else. The borders that would have given them a second buyer closed a century ago. One market, one price, and it isn't their price. A yak worth a great deal further down the valley buys a few sacks of flour up on the plateau. Every year, the herd gets a little smaller relative to what the family needs, and every year, the arithmetic in September gets tighter. The other thing that comes up the valley is opium. It arrives as medicine because there is no other medicine. It's given for pain, for cough, for a baby who won't settle, for the long dark when there's nothing to do about any of it. It works, in the short term, at the price you'd expect. Households up there carry a dependency rate that would be a national emergency anywhere, with a name for it. That's not a moral failure. It's what happens when you put a population 8 months from a pharmacy and let one thing through. Here's the part people find hardest to sit with. They have been offered a way out. They took it once. In the late 70s, when Afghanistan came apart, most of the Kyrgyz walked south over the passes into Pakistan. Thousands of them, herds and all, out through the high country in one movement. They sat in Gilgit for years, at low altitude, in heat their bodies had never met, and a lot of them died there, of the climate, of disease, of the sheer wrongness of the air. In 1982, Turkey took them. They were resettled properly, with land and houses, in the east of the country. Their descendants are still there, and by every measure we normally use, they are better off. And some went back, not many, but some walked north again, up through the passes, back to 4,200 meters, 3 closed borders, and 8 months of snow. I've stopped trying to explain that to people as if it needs explaining. Flew supply along a northern pipeline road for a season once, and watched a place that had always moved get a permanent line drawn through it. Everyone said the road was an improvement. It was. It was also the end of something nobody had asked to end. There is no doctor on the Little Pamir. There has not been a doctor on the Little Pamir in living memory. The nearest clinic is 4 to 6 days away in good conditions. From October, it is not 4 to 6 days away. It is not any number of days away. It is simply on the other side of a pass full of snow, which means that up there, a complication in childbirth is not a medical event. It's a geography event. The Kyrgyz of the Wakhan have some of the worst maternal mortality figures recorded anywhere. And the reason isn't mysterious. Nothing goes wrong that couldn't be fixed. It goes wrong in a place the fix cannot reach. I know a version of this from the other side of it. February, years ago, a call came for a lift out of a settlement. Someone needed a hospital and needed it that day. 37 below. The oil in my engine was the consistency of cold honey, and the cloud was sitting on the deck with no lift in it anywhere I could find. I sat with the radio for 9 hours waiting for a break that never opened. I didn't launch. That was the right call. I've never once felt good about it. The difference is that I had an aircraft and a decision to make. Up there, most winters, There is no aircraft and no decision. There's a family and a stove and the dark and whatever happens next. Late May, the passes soften. The first thing that happens is not celebration. It's counting. How many animals came through? How many people came through? Every household knows both numbers within a day, and the second one gets carried around the plateau by whoever walks between camps first. Then the whole thing restarts. Herds up to summer pasture, dung collected and stacked, wool pressed, the wall rebuilt, and the arithmetic run again for a winter that is 4 months away and already deciding things. There's no season up there that isn't about the next one. So, the animal. The yak is the entire system. It carries the loads that keep them fed. Its dung is the heat that keeps them alive through 8 months of dark. Its milk and its wool are food and clothing and the felt on the walls. And it is the only thing they own that anyone in the valley will trade for. Kill it and eat it, and you've eaten your transport, your heating, your roof, and your bank account in one winter. So they mostly don't. A herd of yaks up there isn't livestock, it's infrastructure. The road, the power grid, and the currency. Standing out in the snow, having to be kept alive by people who are themselves barely being kept alive. We took all of that apart into separate systems a long time ago and got very good at not knowing where any of it comes from. Up there, every family can point at theirs. 8 months without a road. If you had to choose one thing to have with you up there for that winter, one animal, one tool, one person, what would it be? Put it in the comments. I read them.